Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
These are patriotic Canadians.
Oh my God!
You're now attacking different older people.
You guys are disgusting!
Look at the fucking movement right here. Look. Look. You coward! You found your
Lives on the line. We have nowhere else to go.
My phone dropped.
Practicing peaceful.
I hope it wasn't.
Anybody with us? I see you shaking your head back now. You should be watching this. Take a lesson in courage.
Man, they declared this called the Crusade.
Cowards!
Nazi supporters.
Our generation theory. Every generation. Law enforcement professionals, huh?
Oh, you got blown up in Afghanistan, eh? And these guys are going to arrest you and push you back when you serve for your country?
Right. You guys keep those actions. Resign everybody else to serve them. Go for it.
I don't smoke. I'm dying. You don't know my life. You don't know my struggle. I fought for my shit. I survived the worst. This is nothing.
Tell your boss to stop it, huh?
I've been blown
Follow the
up.
law.
Peace and love. And if
No
you think
respect
he
for
does,
human dignity
you're wrong.
whatsoever. We're not livestock to make rich boomers. All serial killers are boomers. I almost said that.
We love you all.
All they want is to be heard.
Can I take a second?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I need a minute.
You are not a serf.
I did surfing once.
We want to
oh
do
man, I
the
hurt myself big too.
No. You don't want to go SERF. That's
Oh,
what
no,
these guys
I-
want you to do. They want you to go SERF.
Oh,
Nuremberg 2, boys. Can't wait to see you there.
I don't want to be here.
You guys' grandchildren are going to be born
I'm
in
not trying to be
debt,
home with my wife and kids.
owing a piece of their lives to the state.
They got in.
That's a wounded veteran! Yes! That's a wounded veteran! Yes, that's a wounded warrior right there! They got a shield in his fucking head! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up!
Hold on, stop pushing.
Back up!
They kicked him in the leg.
Back up! Back up!
Hold on, stop pushing.
They kicked him in the leg. The RCR guy. They booted him. That one. Where's the one? The one who booted him was this one. Kucher Lazon. He kicked the vet that had the wounded right leg. He kicked him right in the leg.
Oh, he's a greasy one.
This guy right here. Kucher Lazon. He kicked him.
Hey, what's up, guys? Saw you kicking that wounded veteran while he was down there earlier. You guys are a bunch of thugs, huh? No, not at all. You want to keep the rich guys in power right now, huh? Soaking up all the wealth, buying up all those residential properties, turning the millennials into a bunch of permanent renters, reaching into the pockets of the unborn, resigning all future children to be born into serfdom. That's you guys abusing your citizens, huh? Just following orders, just like those guards at the ovens of Auschwitz. That's you. Right? You just do as you're told, right?
Moi, j'ai pas la même opinion. These guys are getting in.
Hey, what's up, troops? Jeff Evely, Ops Sgt-Maj with Veterans for Freedom, back with you now on this 29th day of March 2023. And we have back with us tonight a very special guest and close ally of Veterans for Freedom, Dana Metcalf, aka Raven. Dana, how you doing? You're in my stream already. I thought I would bring you in.
I'm trying to fix myself so I'm not in the horizontal mode, but that's okay. I can flip myself around. Let's see if I can pull this off.
Yeah, we're
upside down.
There you go. Yeah.
There we go. Let's just lock and load. Awesome. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing today, Dana? It's good to see you.
You can see I'm an amateur podcaster, clearly.
Yeah, we all are. I think it's a sign of the times, though. You know, this is citizen activism this day and age. So here we are.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna have to stay in this mode, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So.
No worries.
How are you?
Good. Yeah, good to see you. Good to have you back on the program. It's been a while. So I saw you put a video out there a few days ago, and it made its way onto the V4F page. And it's like, damn, this would be a good time to do check in with Dana, see what's going on in Newfoundland in particular, because I know you're quite active out there. Yeah, you had a lot to say during that video. I think you covered a lot of ground. So I thought we'd just kind of bring you in here and see what your what kind of flag you're waving this week. So we'll dive right into it. I lined up a few clips for you just to keep things running smoothly around here. So I thought we'd start ourselves off with a little bit of a meme. This is Babylon B, and we have a bunch of guys in lab coats here looking at some graph on a whiteboard, and it says doctors report startling rise in testicular injuries among women athletes. Well done, Babylon B. It's the great thing about him is it's hard to tell whether it's satire or not. It's so close to reality. Yeah. So I thought maybe we'd start somewhere around here, since we're talking about a lot of health issues, and we'll try our best to not get banned here, but we almost never let that hold us back, quite frankly. So this is Dr. William Makis. He's an MD, and here's his little bio here. It says Canadian physician with expertise in radiology, oncology, and immunology. Governor General's Medal, University of Toronto scholar, author of 100 plus peer-reviewed medical publications. And he's got a Substack here that says the title is Record SS Deaths in Canadian Province of Nova Scotia. 1 to 1,000 population died in 2022. So that's basically excess deaths going up by 1,000-fold, I believe is what he's saying here. And it's all relating back to a CBC article. So I think that's promising to see that the CBC is actually reporting on something like this. And the headline from the CBC article is Nova Scotia tight-lipped about spike in deaths. Unexpectedly high numbers of people are dying in untimely fashion, expert says. And then he goes through some of the stats globally here. And what's really alarming, I think, about Nova Scotia. So first of all, it says for the first 10 months of 2022, there were about 848 more deaths than expected in Nova Scotia. The province said 546 of those were due to COVID-19. That meant that almost 36% of the deaths are attributable to other causes. CBC News asked the Nova Scotia government what is causing the excess mortality in this province, but it did not receive a specific answer. A spokeswoman noted excess mortality, quote, represents all deaths, cancer, suicide, heart disease, natural causes, etc., not just COVID-19, close quote. But it's unclear what those other causes are. The province declined to declined to interview requests with health department officials and the chief medical officer. The population of Nova Scotia is 900,071,395. The annualized 2022 excess death is 848 divided by 10 over 12 equals 1,018. So 1,018 deaths in 2022 for a population of 971,395 is around one death per 1,000 population. So yeah, that's what he means when he says the 1 to 1,000 rises. It means that there's one more death per 1,000 people in Nova Scotia, which is a huge spike. I think the graphic really says it all if you look at what they have up here. So, and this is coming from StatsCan. 2020, we actually had fewer than normal deaths than 2021. We got 120 more deaths than we normally do. And then in 2022, we got 848 more deaths than we normally do. So for a little province like this out here on the east coast of Canada, that's a pretty enormous spike. And I heard you talking a little bit about some of what's been going on with this. And since we're talking about strategies for the resistance, what do you think? What do you think we ought to be doing with something like this?
Well, for starters, I'm going to bring you up to date on what we discovered in Newfoundland, and how we kind of figured out what was happening. I heard from a retired medical malpractice lawyer that Newfoundland is experiencing 7 times an increase in all-cause mortality than the other Atlantic provinces. So we're getting hit pretty hard. Just to back up what that looks like is in Newfoundland, we used to, there's a company that comes in called Victoria, which are the people that deliver the caskets and the urns to Newfoundland. Of course, I'm good friends with the truckers. Hey, trucker friends. They keep their fingers on the pulse as to what's happening in our province. And originally, they would normally be bringing in 1 casket truck a month. Then it went to 1 casket truck a week. And then I actually, on Twitter, you can find the picture where actually once a week, we now have 2 trucks coming in tandem together. So that's a good indication that we're having problems. Whistleblower inside the hospital says that now they're actually, that they don't really have a great cooler system in our hospital, apparently. And now there are bodies in the hallway on stretchers. Not to be morbid, but that's very terrifying for our province, especially if we're experiencing a higher cause mortality than other provinces. We have to ask ourselves why, you know, that's super scary. But I think, you know, the number one thing that I want, because I've shifted gears. I've shifted some major gears. I figured out a lot of stuff, Jeff, about a lot of things. So MAID,
I'm
right?
all ears. Yeah.
I want to talk about MAID for a minute.
Sure.
So MAID is in the top 3 things for 2022 for mortality, right? We know that it's been offered to the veterans. We know that it's been offered to low-income families. We know that it's been offered to people that are struggling with their health, even young people that are struggling with their health. And we know that the government of Canada is proposing bringing it down to the age of 12. Since MAID has been introduced, there were 30,000, somewhat 30,000, a little slightly over, MAID cases in our country. And in 2022, 10,033 of them, of that 30,000 happened in 2022.
Yeah.
So 1/3 of all of the MAID situation that we've experienced has been happening since this rollout of the vaccine and pandemic. So there's 2 reasons as to why that could happen. Number 1, because of the economic situation, or number 2, people are battling with their health, right? They're battling with their health and they're overwhelmed, and MAID is the only option. So the all-cause mortality increase, I mean, we can talk about the elephant in the room. We don't have vaccines, we have bioweapons, right? I refuse to call them a vaccine anymore. They're bioweapons. If you're watching, don't be scared. As scary as it sounds, don't be scared, because there's a lot of things that are coming that we're going to need you to be brave and courageous for. And everybody has a purpose. So a couple of things that you can do for your health, get yourself on some NAC and find yourself some ivermectin. 2 of those things are very helpful to keeping our health up and hopefully reducing that all-cause mortality problem that we have. The number one thing that we can do to prevent any more all-cause mortality is to stand up against the digital ID, because the digital ID leads to the CBDC, and the CBDC comes with a vaccine requirement. So all of you lovely people out there that rolled up your sleeves for your country, that feel like you are out of the woods because you are vaccinated, I'm here to tell you that you are no longer vaccinated. And for all of you unvaccinated people that seem that they feel like they need to constantly pick on the vaccinated for how they were treated with discrimination, we are now seeing a sign of deterioration in blood cells of the unvaccinated on par with the vaccinated. So some of this stuff is environmental, but at the end of the day, I know I'm babbling, but I have a lot of stuff that I want to share because I'm very excited about my new messaging.
Yeah.
Is we're all in this together.
Might as well co-op that marketing
right?
Well, it's very effective. Proven safe and effective. That was another good one.
We're all in this together. And when we talk about PSYOPs, right? You're big on the PSYOPs, Jeff. Can you explain to everybody what PSYOPs is for anybody that's on my feed that might be watching? Can you explain where it comes from?
So it's a psychological operation. It's the propaganda war essentially, and the primary purpose of the propaganda is to demoralize us, but also just as sort of a general, the kind of Reader's Digest way of saying it, what I've been saying it is. What they're trying to do is they're trying to sow chaos. They're basically appealing to all the darker angels of human nature. At the same time that, another aspect of the, I don't know if you wouldn't fit it in with the PSYOP component of it, but I would say the unmitigated illegal immigration that's taking place is also a component of what is the art of war that's being inflicted on us by the Chinese, as far as I'm able to ascertain. And yeah, they're kind of gaslight us into thinking that we're racist. So we'll take in all of the migrants from the 2015 crisis when they took in zero, and Saudi Arabia took in zero. And we end up with overwhelming amounts of fighting age males, in case anybody hadn't noticed that. That's what they primarily were in the... I remember back in the day, like they were talking about statistics, and it was like 85% of them, 70 to 85% of the waves of migrants that were coming into Europe were fighting age males. And ISIS said that they would be hiding their operatives within the migrant flows and so on and so forth. And so the PSYOP is, I remember the election of Trudeau was really because of the toddler who washed up on a beach in Greece during the migrant crisis. Now that turned out to be the father's fault. It looks like he was probably a human smuggler, and he was the captain of the boat when it capsized, and so he ended up drowning. Why he was taking a toddler on a mission like that, I have no idea. And we ended up buying the propaganda narrative hook, line, and sinker that we were going to be helping, toddlers who were washing up on beaches if we wouldn't come to save them. And what we ended up doing at the end of the day was taking a bunch of people who were living in apartments in Turkey and bringing them here. So they had already been resettled in Turkey. So anyway, the PSYOP is the part where they're lying, we know they're lying, they know we know they're lying, and we're all the bad guys for not participating in the lie. So it's essentially a gaslighting campaign.
Okay. Well, I figured out something deep and profound over the last couple of days. Now, you might not agree, which is a perfect time to have a good conversation about it, because I'd like to spit out what's in my brain. So PSYOPs it can also tie in with controlled opposition, right? So people do PSYOPs to create a reaction, right? Yep. And in our freedom movement, the biggest problem that we have that I feel, because I'm tied in with everybody, is that everybody now, because we don't have any direction, are doing this. This person's controlled up. This person's controlled up. This person's controlled up. Guess what? They're making us controlled opposition through PSYOP. Okay, so think about this for a second. So down in the United States yesterday, there was a transgender person that went into a school and hurt, and condolences to their families, but hurt children and adults, right? What did the headline say? Transgender person, mainstream media, right? Christian school, transgenderism. So what they're doing is they are weaponizing the freedom movement to propel segregation right? And to get us moving the information to fuel the hate. Because we're looking at this. I know I retweeted it. I looked at it. I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. The transgender community, this is nuts. And then I sat down and I thought about it for a second. I said, wait a minute. Number one, it's on mainstream media. And they make it a point to talk about transgenderism and Christianity all in the same little blanket. So what they're doing is they're pitting us against the people that we're trying to help, because nobody gets anywhere unless we all do this together as a country. And we're not getting organized because everybody's picking their own little piece of this fight, whether they're going to go fight transgenderism, or they're going to fight the indoctrination of our children, or they're going to fight the vaccine mandates, or they're going to fight. Listen, we don't win with their game, right? The reason I think that we've had such a heavily increase in usage of MAID is not necessarily 100% because of hardship or illnesses. I think we have a huge amount of people committing suicide because they're waking up. And all we're doing is going transgenderism, indoctrination. Like, we're painting this really ugly picture of our country, right? So I think the key to us moving forward when we talk about strategy is to readjust our position and not put ourselves in the position of hate, right? So, for example, I'm a Christian, right? I don't give a shit who's not Christian. I support everybody. If you're a good person, you're on my roster, right? But the minute you talk about Christianity and you talk about God, all of a sudden you lose a part of the audience. And it's okay that people don't believe in God, but still you want people to unite, right? So as a hairdresser, I was always told, no politics, no race, and no religion. Everything that we're fighting about is politics, race, and religion.
Yeah.
So what are the two things? Jeff's like, stop babbling. What are the two things that we all have in common? The two things that every single person on this podcast, this planet, left, right to right of center, and this world has in common.
What?
Anybody out there got an idea? Okay.
All right. Let's see. Anybody?
The number one thing that we have in common, the thread that ties us together, is our desire to survive. Right? To get up in the morning, to have food, clothing, and shelter, and to provide that for people we care about. The second thing that we have in common is we might not believe in God, right? We might not believe in critical race theory. We might not believe in politics. We might not believe in any of these things, but we believe in love, because if not, we wouldn't be fighting, because we wouldn't give a shit, right? So those are our two marketing strategies that we should be going forward with. Is number one, how do we survive, and how do we unite? And we put down the weapons that they give us to propel their agenda. Because as long as we're doing this, like, we know the liberals are bad. We know the NDP is bad. And we know Pierre Poilievre is a shithead. Excuse my language. I can say that.
That's all good.
But he is. So our democracy sucks, right? There is no way that we're going to be able to go, oh, there's a savior, so we're going to have to save ourselves. And the reason that they locked us all down was to put us in front of these ugly little boxes in our houses, because that was all that we could do, and program us to accept the fact that the unvaccinated was bad, right? Let's put them all in their houses, just like they did with the Germany, to say that the Jews were bad. So when the little buses and little trains were going on and they were going off to the gas chambers, that everybody was like taking their purse and eating their ice cream, right? That's what we've experienced in our country. But what we don't realize as a freedom movement and as freedom lovers and as people is that we're playing their game. We go, fuck them. That's what I say.
Yeah, we write everybody off. And I do think that that's kind of human nature. People are really quick to do that these days, especially because there's a kind of, I think, religious fervor that has been injected into our politics. And people are basically treating their politics like it's their religion right now, especially when you look at something like the transgender movement. And just a couple of quick comments on that, because I was tracking that story with the transgender shooter, and it is remarkable to see transgender shooter and Christian school in the same mainstream headline. But something that some other folks were pointing out is, like, that is kind of radicalism. That's a pretty well, it's a pretty extreme leftist view, the idea that gender is malleable. And yeah, like I said, they've kind of taken this on as a dogma in the new wokeness religion, and they're radicalizing these people because they're always talking to them about things like the transgender suicide. You know, when people like say states of Florida or something like that ban biomedical transitions for minors, people start talking about like the high suicide rate and how this is going to lead to all these deaths, and so it's a transgender suicide. And now the people are just kind of catching the wave tops out there, because that's what they're counting on, is that a lot of people are just going to catch that you know, that kind of inflammatory headline about transgender genocide. And from the transgender perspective, what they seem to be doing is fighting back. In their own minds, it's like a revolt, and it's against Christians. And I do think, because we were talking about the PSYOP, that a component of the PSYOP, it's an anti-Western PSYOP. If you look at something like antihate.ca, what they're putting up there is basically just anything patriotic or pro-Western is hateful. And I think that probably comes from Beijing. They hate us because we kicked their asses in the wars of the 1840s that they call the Opium Wars. That we're not about opium, but we still tell our kids that because it's their propaganda. And they're playing the long game. So if they can just kind of sterilize our children and dumb them down by keeping them out of school, then say about 3 generations from now, the people that we're going to be looking to lead our society are just not going to be capable of leading a complex society in the 21st century, especially with hostile adversaries, and they'll just dominate, you know, our descendants. God, it's just, I mean, it's the kids that really, you know, really makes it so grotesque. And I heard you talking about that, so I went and dug up a resource. And here's so so that is what they're putting into the schools here. And SOGI is sexual orientation and gender inclusivity, I think. And so this is what they're given. This is a staff manual. This is guidance for educators in BC, where they've got the SOGI education. You know, the SOGI already implemented, and this is coming to a school near you. It's really bad in Ontario, as I understand. But I had a passage highlighted there, and I think I lost it. But yeah, it's right here. So this is part of their concept here, facilitating a student-centered support plan, and this is for supporting student transitions. And they talk about transition having these stages of social transition, medical transition, and surgical transition. And here we have the student support team. And let me see, what does it say? When informing others about a student's transition, discuss with student first, whenever possible. For example, if a student confides in a teacher, are they expecting to bring in counseling support? Mental health support can be a reward, and blah, blah, blah. Alternatively transitioning. Okay. So they're talking about informing staff, secretarial staff, supervisory staff, and custodians, as well as teachers and administrators. I don't see parents in here anywhere.
Jeff, listen to me.
Okay.
They let 2 generations go through. There's a bunch of books that you can read, and there's some videos that are online that explain that they let 2 generations go through the indoctrination system so that children recognized the system as authority over parents. So they did that for 2 generations. So people that are around the 35-year-old mark and the 15, 17, 16-year-old mark, they let that go through so that children would kind of not accept authority from their parents, that they would respect the system better. So we're already in 2 decades of grooming. And that's why all of us that are like in our mid 40s are going, no offense, but what the fuck's going on? We're sending our children to school and we're getting back these kids that make absolutely no sense to us, right? A couple of books that people can read is George Orwell, 1985, Hierarchy 300, and what was the other one that I read? Oh, The Great Reset, obviously. But in regards to like the gender thing, did you hear what happened up in Fort McMurray about how the parents figured out that Fort McMurray was pioneering the SOGI?
I did. Go ahead.
Anyway, big story. The parents got pissed off, like parents would, about all this stuff that's happening in our schools. And they requested a meeting, and they weren't even allowed to go in through the school. What they did was they walked them out around the outside and took them into the gymnasium. When a parent questioned whether or not why they couldn't go through the school and that they wanted to go through the school, basically the principal told them that they didn't have to allow the parents in school anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah. And, well, I saw, okay, so I saw your video that you put up there earlier, and this was another thing that you were showing too, like just to give people a flavor for what we're talking about here. Dana, I appreciate your candor, Dana. So, yeah.
So with our children, they're introducing things to our children that are highly inappropriate. Teachers, they're having private assemblies where they're bringing in guest speakers that may or may not be transgender, that are explaining things that are way beyond the grasp of understanding of what a 12-year-old should be learning. And I know that there's people out there that disagree with me, but when you talk about a 12-year-old little girl, they're not old enough to have their menstrual cycle. How are they supposed to know what sex they are? Or even, should they even really know about sex at that point in time? Children are struggling greatly with their identity. They don't know if they are supposed to be boys or girls or boys. You know, I do believe that there are children out there that are confused as to, you know, whether or not they like boys or girls or both. I don't think it's really the school's responsibility to identify things in them and encourage them to have surgeries that mutilate their bodies. I don't think it's appropriate that the government is allocating $75,000 to any person that wants to get their gender changed when we don't have enough diabetes needles for diabetics patients, and we don't have enough cancer medications for people that can't afford the life-saving treatments they need. And today, if you look down my feed a little bit earlier, you'll see a little booklet that was shown to a grade 7 student that was 12 years old, and it depicted a putting on of a condom and some sexual content. I managed to find the heterosexual version of this, and this is what's being given to the kids. If I sat down and showed this to my child and he carried it to school, I would probably have social services on my door going, you're showing this stuff to your kid and that's pornographic. And I'm just going to show you. Okay, so this is the straight version of what went out in Carboneer, but the other lady sent me the gay version. Tell me, like, my 12-year-old upstairs is the furthest thing away from even thinking about sexual intercourse, but look at this. This is what's being given to your 12-year-olds. And in the gay version, it shows 2 men. When did you ever learn that? I mean, when I was, in grade 7, I was learning about menstrual cycles and things like that. If you scroll down my page, you'll see more information about these little booklets and stuff that they're giving out. So we have to start playing a more active role and try to protect our children. And we also have to do it and say, like, to our LGBTQ community, we don't have a problem with how you live your life. But if I were to walk into a school wearing a short skirt and heavy makeup and a bra and a fishnet shirt, and I started doing a lap dance or kind of looked like I was doing a lap dance in front of your kid, I would probably be kicked out of the school or arrested. Nor is it appropriate for people to give money to these performers. Like, why am I seeing videos of children giving money to transgender people? I mean, if I can't take them to the strippers, so why are we allowing this to happen? So those are just some things that I wanted to kind of plant.
So yeah, it's sick. But like you said, I mean, I remember sex ed when I was in grade 7, and yeah, it was like the mechanics of it. And there was a lot of awareness around contraceptives and condom use and safe sex and stuff like that. But, we didn't get like the, like you say, the pornographic imagery. Well, I'm going to point to what I always point to. You know, just look at who's running our institutions right now, and it is the boomer generation. That's why we didn't have to deal with this stuff when we were going to school, because we were being taught by a different generation. Well, not taught, but the different generation was running school boards, and they're sort of notorious for not respecting boundaries with children, especially if you look at the rates for child rape and things like that back in the 80s. Yeah, so this is the sexual revolution generation of the 70s. The radicals from back then, peak institutional power right now with nobody they have to answer to, and this is kind of what we're seeing. And also, it serves the purpose of that Chinese psyop, like I said, by basically just you know, they will basically cull us over a number of generations, I'd say. So, thoughts?
Well, let's talk about the $75,000 per person to get a gender transition and what this looks like for a child. Okay. So like I grew up in a sawmill and I was raised by 3 men. I didn't actually grow up in a sawmill. I grew up working in a sawmill, raised by 3 men, played with trucks. If I was in school right now, they would already be discussing with me in private about what it looks like to take medication that would render me infertile, to remove my breasts, and to start taking male hormones at 12 without parental consent. When parents have challenged this in court, there's a case in Ontario, I can't quote the name, but there's a case in Ontario where a father said, like, I'm cool with her being lesbian. You know what I mean? This is all good. But she wanted to take the medication, and they went through the school guidance counselor into the court system with social services, and that father had to allow her to take this medication and do whatever she wanted to do, and he wasn't legally allowed to call her by her birth name. Now, that's only one small piece of the picture, okay? So at 12 years old, you can't make that decision, and you should have parental input. But what we have happening now in our country, and there are actual active lawsuits that are happening, is because people who have transitioned over already throughout the school system are now hitting 20 years old. They're not sexually functioning if they're a male, because it's the same medication that they give in jail for sex offenders. So if they're given that early on in life, their penises doesn't grow, and they end up with a dysfunctional micropenis and could grow up to be a healthy gay man. So what's happening now is the reason that there's such a high suicide rate in the transgenderism, it's not because they're not accepted. It's because either one, their stuff don't work, and a large portion of them are actually filing lawsuits in Canada, to say that they felt like they weren't given proper information and that they were encouraged to mutilate their bodies. Now, Jeff, you're a soldier, right? You've been all over the place. You've seen all the different cultures and stuff happen. And I remember being in Edmonton, and there was a case that happened because I used to work with Edmonton Services as a victim liaison, crisis intervention. So I heard a lot of stuff that was happening on the streets. And it was interesting that at that time, there had been people from the Middle East. There was a family from the Middle East that wanted to have their plan was to have their daughter's genitals modified to represent their culture. And it resulted.
Are we talking about female genital mutilation?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a better way to frame it. Good word.
Yeah, that's what it's called. I think it's probably about one word too long, and it should just be genital mutilation, as in circumcision shouldn't be legal either. But I digress.
But it was illegal, right? Yeah. The family got charged. The dad got convicted, and we are now committing the same crimes against our children. Right?
Yeah, it is genital mutilation, straight up.
Yeah, it should never be legal. But this is part of the program, right? Dehumanize people so that they don't realize that they have power. Demasculate men. Masculinity is not freaking toxic. Abuse is toxic. Men are not toxic. Men are not toxic. They're the hunter-gatherers and the protectors of the family. You know, it's like every facet of our existence has been infiltrated. And the last thing we need is us pissing each other off talking about race, religion, and politics, right? We need to start focusing on survival and how to move forward. Because you, like me, Jeff, we know the clock is ticking, you know, and we know that this stuff is coming really fast and hard. you know. So we have to go through the gentle process of trying to buffer these people or figure out how we can create a message that is more inviting, right? My suggestion is, instead of freedom fighters, freedom lovers, because the more we call ourselves fighters, the more we're going to draw the fight to ourselves. We have to now position ourselves in a place where we are more inviting. I mean, if you think about it, if anybody's on Twitter and don't see 1,000 posts a day scrolling through their feed, that's between Dr. Alexander Bridle, Maxins, you know, all of this stuff is being pushed really hard. And if we're going to be the leaders, hypothetically meaning, you know, the bigger groups going across the country, it's our duty. Exactly. It's our responsibility to shake the tree, deliver the information as gently as we can, and to catch them when they fall, because people are not going to mentally handle what we're looking at. I mean, okay, let's
They're called detransitioners. I'll throw that in there because I don't think we use that word yet, but that's the people that are suing now, that are in their 20s that were victimized. They're called detransitioners. Sorry, go ahead.
And they don't get any government support for it. Once you've
detransitioning,
not a dollar.
Wow.
Not a dollar do they get, which is terrible. So yeah, we have to work together now, and we have to say we're sorry. I know that sounds like a really pussy thing to say for a freedom fighter that's been on every major movement in the country. And trust me, I'm ready to get a horse and sword just like the rest of you. I am ready. I'm like, let's start the party and get going. But at the same time, if we don't have our freedom loving army with us, we're going to be ineffective, you know?
Yeah. And I guess I would pile on. I would definitely just add to that a couple of my favorite things to say in my position as a military leader in my career. One is I don't know, and the other one is I fucked up. So I think, I mean, a little bit of humility goes a long way. And if we're trying to attract more flies with honey than with vinegar, I don't think that's really true though. Then yeah, I think there's a kind of humility. This, like I said, would go a long way in a circumstance like this. And the other thing that you were just talking about there with a lot of these folks that are getting all chewed up and spit out by the system, you know, these the poor kids. Well, like I said, there's a radical element to it. Like it's a radical act really to undergo the biomedical transition surgery. And since we're talking about the PSYOP, I think that's a huge component of it, is the anti-Western component of it. And it's in the schools where they're, again, you know, like I said, they'll say that white people invented war and racism and all that stuff. And that the white kids, they need to atone for their whiteness. This is part of the religion, right? This is the gaslighting, and this is what authoritarian regimes do, is they mimic religions, because essentially it's like Nietzsche said, the more we secularize as a society, the more we would put the religious impulse into the state, and then the state kind of fills that God-shaped hole in the human heart, and that's where the kind of religious fervor comes from. And since they're gaslighting them for being born white and cultured into Westernism, then, you know, you need to atone, you need to cast off your old white life and give yourself over to the one true faith, throw yourself at the feet of the master, and no better way to atone, to demonstrate your fealty than to go through a process like that. Like that is some next level fealty, and so that's what I think is happening. Is it's this diversity card that's kind of laid down in front of them. They're being told, you know, you're a white Westerner, so you're not in the club. And all the special people who are in the club who have a voice in our society, you know, you're not there. But if you want to get into the club, there is this procedure that's available to you. And you know, in doing so, you may atone. So that's essentially how I see it happening in a nutshell.
Well, and let's talk about women. I want to talk about women. Okay.
Love women. Let's talk about them.
I think women are awesome. But let's talk about women, and let's talk about what's happening to women. Okay. I am a woman, clearly. right? I've been called a misogynist.
Yeah.
How am I called a misogynist? Because I want to defend what defines a woman, right? Let's talk about that for a second. So what's happening, number one, there were white slaves before there were black slaves, right? And we are now in a position where what governments usually do in a takeover like this is they'll often sensationalize a minority, right? To flip everything kind of to an inversion. So right now it's an attack on women, right? We have a full-on attack on women. We can't play sports without some dude, you know what I mean, that shows up with his stuff. We can't have our own bathrooms. We can't have, do you know that somebody actually said to me the other day that trans people are more women than women are because they have to work harder at it? How do you feel about that?
That's inverted logic, standard.
Right. And if we continue to let this myth, you know, because opinions are opinions and facts are facts. Biological males are biological males and biological females are biological females. I think it's okay to wear lipstick and wear wigs and love who you want and all that other kind of stuff. But I don't think it's okay to be in denial of your autonomy. Right. And I think we have to stop with the theater of it all. I think we have to completely stop saying that boys are girls and girls are boys and teach their children to love their bodies. Why are we not teaching our children to be comfortable in their own skin? Like everybody out there's like, we don't believe in God. We don't believe in God, but you ended up in the wrong body. Well, who the fuck put you in the wrong body? Right? Like, what are we talking about here?
It's a religious claim. It's this idea that there is a ghost inside the machine, and it's being so it's being pushed so hard right now that they're willing to say that the wrong ghost can be inside the machine. And to me, like, I'm not a religious person, as you're aware, and I think it's like the personality, everything, it arises through natural chemical processes in the brain, and since they are chemical, your body's chemistry does matter, and your gender is probably a very strong influence in your personality as well. And I think I just want to say the part about the this kind of negation of womanhood that's going on out there, and that's what's happening with the propaganda. It's like a mass line attack. It's a Marxist attack. We did a wonderful video on it. You should go check it out. It's like 3 hours long, and it's called "Commie Bastard TTPs," as in tactics, techniques, and procedures. And that's what they do is they have a rhetorical negation for essentially everything, for reality, they turn it all on its head. And I think that the attack on women in the context of the PSYOP is part of the humiliation. It's part of that demoralization that they're trying to inflict on us. And it ties in well with a lot of this toxic masculinity stuff. I think what's really under attack is machismo, which is, a bad word. It's a dirty word right now, and that has been the case. Like it wasn't always that way, though. The GI generation, World War II veterans, would have been pretty macho and valued machismo, and in the Western construct, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of Mexicans actually see machismo as a very positive thing. The kind of migrant worker who walks to California and sleeps on the side of the highway so he can send his money back to his family, in a house in Mexico. He probably thinks that's a pretty macho thing to do, and it always had everything to do with the positive traits of masculinity, like courage and chivalry, which are very Western ideas as well. Chivalry in particular, and so I think that's a big part of what they're doing with going after the kids and with the negation of womanhood and the protections that we've put in place over generations for women is they're saying, look at what we can do to your women and children. You can't protect your women and children, and it has a pretty profound psychological effect, I think, on
and they tell women that they don't need men. Right? So they're tearing apart the family unit. So think about this. They need to indoctrinate our children. So we have to send our children to school. We want women to be in the workforce, right? So they also have less time to spend with the children. Then they convince women that we can be successful ourselves, which puts us in one income. Do you know what I mean? Working double the time, and that we don't need men, right? So they've continued to do that. But what really happens, everybody needs a partner. So I'm going to say something you may or may not agree with what I'm about to say, Jeff, but
means
in this war, because we are in war, right? In war, there's a lot of women that are stepping up, which has never happened before, right? Typically, women are the ones that are home taking care of babies, but we've all been conditioned now that we have to be responsible for everything, just like dudes are. When really, I just want to be a woman and stay home and bake muffins. Unfortunately, that's not my time. But
it's almost not an option for women anymore.
Exactly. But in a war, if women are going to be the voice of compassion, because I think it's legitimately an inverted world, and we're seeing lots of hate, and we have to promote love, and we have to promote unity in order to be able to unite, because all we have to do is say no. If 37 million people say no, they're going to shit themselves and go away. But men are the swords and the shields to protect the messages of the women. Like, everybody has a role to play. Like, when I was in Ottawa, I had to go do some things that required security because I had Antifa up my ass. They didn't give me a bunch of girls to walk around with.
No.
They never gave me a bunch of girls. I got a bunch of ball swinging men, right? That were military. So we need to, like, remove our own programming. You know, we need to remove our own programming as women. And realistically, like in my chair all the time, when we're talking about how we can make things better, I tell them to go find a man. And instead of saying, I need clean hands, you know, this many RSPs and this job description, can you hunt? Can you fish? And keep me and my children safe? Because that's the role of the men. That is a man's job. I mean, I'm 135 pounds. I'm full of piss and vinegar, yes. But, you know, I'm no warrior in that capacity.
Yeah, and that is what they're driving us toward here too. I mean, that's what the art of war is all about. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. That's what Sun Tzu said in the 5th century BC. So that goes way back in Chinese heritage. It predates the classics of Athens in Western culture, which is basically the foundation of Western philosophy. And so it goes that far back. The guiding mantra here is whatever weakens the West is true. And so it's about our health. It's about our food supply. It's about being able to heat our homes, about being able to procreate. It's about our mere survival. It's everything, all the systems that we've built up to liberate us from our natural circumstances, which are miserable. Don't tell me that hunter-gatherers are happy. They're miserable, living in scarcity. And so that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to create scarcity. And it's going to get to a point where we're not going to be able to rely on these systems. And you may or may not be able to get food at the grocery store, or have power to heat your home, have a working furnace, this kind of thing. So, you're going to need to build some resiliencies in there. And men are good at stuff like that, hunting and fishing, and generally, we're pretty handy and stuff like that. So,
and women have
services are gone.
Women, it's women's roles now to look at their husbands. If you are listening and you are a woman, okay, and you can't get your husband to fully wake up, I'm going to tell you a trick. Look at him and say, the world's fucked up. This is not cool. We've got kids, and I need you to be a warrior. Give the invitation to your husband and your partner or your father or your brothers to be men.
Yep.
That's what needs to happen.
Men want to be badasses. And that's kind of your job, I think, in the relationship as the woman. Is to help us feel like badasses. So
we've got to undo what society has done. We have to learn that the disrespect that's been shown to our men is not appropriate. The rise of the women, we could rise as women without taking away men. We can introduce sexual diversity without changing their genders. We can accomplish what we need to accomplish in this war without violence. I believe we can do it without violence.
Me too.
And you know, the number one thing that we need to do is whatever the government tells you to do, if they teach you to hate, you learn to love, right? If they teach you to not take ivermectin, if they tell you not to take a vitamin, I would be the first one at Shoppers Drug Mart piling up on those those vitamins.
Stock up on ivermectin.
Exactly, right?
It's proven safe and effective, really.
Yeah, and we have to work on deprogramming each other and as gentle as possible. We have to deprogram each other. Start by like, you know, what do you think about this? Or that's kind of weird. Like I just tell people, I said, do you know that banking's always a good one because it doesn't involve health, right? So if you go like, there's no tellers at this place and you can't get money out, then they're like, money, you know? And then the next time you see them, you just take it one step further. So.
Yeah, speaking of the CBDCs and the coming collapse, here's Janet Yellen. She's the Secretary of the Treasury down in the U.S. and this is the war plan, guys. So here's Janet Yellen, boomer female.
Fed board and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is
and
your
we
plan?
made that determination.
Right. So what is your
banks.
plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening
And
because you're fully insured no matter what the amount is. If you're in a big bank, you're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
you were at Signature and it just barely met that threshold. You were at Signature.
Well, we felt that there was a serious risk of contagion that could have brought down and triggered runs on many banks. And that's something, given that our judgment is that the banking system overall is safe and sound, depositors should have confidence in the system, and we took these actions.
So is there any discussion that that special assessment would only apply to the larger banks, or was it always assumed the special assessment would cover every bank, including rural banks in my state?
Just going to have to move on. Collapse of the banking system and its economic consequences that will have very severe effects on banks in Oklahoma that will also be threatened.
I'm just worried about the long. I'm just worried about the long-term.
We are going to have to move on.
Yeah. So they don't know what they're doing.
And I, in
and
consultation.
here's another financial marker. Canadians have the largest debt burden of all G7 countries. So this, I think, is the game plan. Yeah, they're going to destroy our currency. I mean, once they've racked up the debt in both the United States and in Canada and across the West, and with these kinds of reckless actions in the banking sector, the overregulation that's destroying confidence. What's happening is all of the wealth is being consolidated into larger and larger banks because we're borrowing all this money here from larger and larger banks. And the big fish is eating up the little fish. And once we're all centralized in the big fish, the currency goes poof. It's not worth anything, but we've got this CBDC and 15-minute cities to come in and save the day. What do you think, Dana?
I think they can kiss my ass, Jeff. Sorry. No, but really, like, it's not an option for anybody that wants to have their children grow up as slaves from day one. I mean, realistically, we've already all been slaves because we have a birth certificate that signs us over to the corporation and our assets. But for starters, let's talk about the Ukraine. Let's go boom, boom, boom. Number one, the Ukraine is the biggest washing machine in the in the world for these people. What they do is governments are borrowing money, and normally when governments borrow money, it's to reinvest in critical infrastructure, which then generates more money, contributes more taxes, and that's a functioning economy. Since when have you ever seen any sensationalization of any other war? Oh, the poor Iraqis. Or look at the poor Africans. We've done nothing for the Africans. But Ukraine, they directed all the money to the Ukraine. So what they're doing is everybody who has a registered savings account, a registered mortgage, a registered RRSPs, or all those things in the strawman world, those are all registered assets to the Bank of Canada. That all belongs to them. The Minister of Finance, I believe it was, clearly stated that Canadians don't necessarily have a definitive right to independent property ownership. And everybody out there that's thinking about voting Conservative, have a look at their last campaign that they ran. They said that if you don't have a land dwelling on a piece of land, that they have rights to take away your property.
Wow.
Good luck for the Conservatives. Anyway, so the banking system, it's going to collapse. Whether we win or we lose, it's going to collapse. So all Canadians are going to have to make one decision or the other. These are your options. The system is coming down, whether you like it or not. Get your pennies out of the bank. Buy what you can. Don't worry about your debt. Live now. If you want to go on a holiday and that MasterCard's got room, see you later. Enjoy the beach. But everybody's going to have to make a decision, and it's best to mentally prepare for what that decision looks like, because that's how you start to do the steps that you need to live outside the system. So definitive money's gone. Option one, the people win. Yeah. We got freedom. We've got our democracy rearranged or whatever's going to happen with that, and hopefully get some good people in there to kind of, take the square wheels off the truck and get us going back in some form of, sensibility. But we're going to have to learn how to live outside the system, which means barter trade, growing fruits and vegetables, swapping things, like all that kind of stuff. There, your children will be free, but you will struggle. If we had our grandfathers around to teach us how to do everything, it'd be a whole lot easier, but they've spent a lot of years teaching us not to learn anything that actually really matters. The second option is this United Basic Level of Income and the CBDC. Okay, so it looks really pretty in its package, right? If you are desperate, the economy collapses, they come in, they're like, hey, have I got the United Nations and we've got it all figured out for you. They're going to issue you what they call controllable credits. And the controllable credits is going to be based on this climate change hoax. You can only have so much steak. You can only have so much meat. You can only have so much gas. If you leave your 15-minute city and they decide to fine you, they just shut you out of your bank account. My bank account was shut down in Ottawa. I've talked to people in the banking system, and they have clearly said that the infrastructure that was built into their banking system still remains. It hasn't been uninstalled. So yeah, it's still active. So basically, you're either going to surrender to be a full-on beyond slave and live in your open air prison, or you're going to have to learn to live outside the system.
Yeah, I know which one I'm doing.
Me too.
And excuse me, but just on that point about the banking freeze, it's like you were one of the people that had your bank account frozen, and like you said, that capability, that infrastructure that they used to do that, it's still there. It didn't go away. And not only that, but what we saw at the EMA inquiry is that it was pretty unanimous that it needs to be even easier for them to do that next time. That seemed to be the conclusion. One of the conclusions that came out of the inquiry there is that it probably should be easier for them to be able to call an emergency whenever they get their feelings hurt. So you can expect more of this in the future. And here's the model. This is China. Got a bunch of people coming through here from one sector. This is their 15-minute city, and they've got the turnstiles and fenced off, and You got to come up to the facial scanner and show your face to the scanner. And if you're on the naughty list, you're not going anywhere. So
yeah, and it
coming.
comes with a vaccine requirement, Jeff.
Yeah.
Canada just ordered 95 million vaccines for what?
Yeah.
What are we? Is this new fungus that we've got, or the hokey monkey pox that never happened? Why is this happening, and why are taxpayers continuing to support this government? I have no idea.
Well, they're looting the treasury, I think, is the point. This is another part of the scam. It's not just the vaccines that are stockpiled and spoiled, but also the ventilators that were never built and probably ended up as scrap metal on a government website by now. And all these contracts and stuff that are just going to their friends. And I think the goal is to loot the treasury, to give us with to saddle us with insurmountable debt, and then some of these bigger banks like the IMF and whoever the Chinese prefer, probably they're going to come in and bail us out with all kinds of austerity measures like they did in Greece. But it's going to go much further than that. We're going to be going all the way to CBDC and 15-minute cities, like you're saying.
15-minute cities isn't going to work in Newfoundland.
Well, yeah,
I promise you.
Well, this is the thing. I think it's a Chinese mind that's coming up with all of this stuff, and I don't think that they have a very deep appreciation for what it's like to live in Canada, or even like a really vast rural area of any kind. Like the United States is quite rural as well. So. Yeah, I think it's wildly impractical. That's the good news. I don't really see it working, to be honest. I think it would be a complete disaster that we should avoid regardless. But ultimately, I just don't think it'll ever work here for not only geographic reasons, but also because of the culture, China doesn't really have a culture of democracy or freedom or human liberty or anything like that. They don't have a heritage in that way, but we do. So yeah, I don't really think it's ultimately going to be effective. I'll say that much.
And talking about democracy,
yeah,
I recently have had a little chat with Brian Peckford, and he's concerned that we're not going to be able to put the wheels on the truck. So, when you've got the leader of the Constitution, I know that there was a comment from Patty, are they not unconstitutionally governing us? Well, when the creator of the, Charter of Rights and Freedom says that he doesn't think this is going to be fixed, we got a problem.
Yeah. And where is the Peckford case right now? Because I think there was a mootness ruling there.
Yeah, it's dust. It's dust.
Yeah. It's
basically
just, that's it, huh?
Their lawyers argued that because the application of it left it open-ended, that they could reintroduce it. Like when they shut down the emergency order and kind of set everything back, it was like it was on pause, that it wasn't abolished, that they could raise it at any point in time. And Brian and their lawyers argued the fact that it's taken so much time, so much resources, and so much effort to be able to get it before a judge, that it was the judge's obligation to make a ruling on it, because it's going to affect Canadians again once these things start to come back. And the judge ruled that because the mandates had been set down like a week or two before on purpose for this to happen, that they called it a moot point and dusted it, which basically means that when this stuff comes back again, everybody's got to start from square one, which we could do this rinse, wash, repeat over and over again, and have it cost thousands and thousands of dollars and not produce anything. So.
Yeah, doesn't seem like the judiciary has been on our side throughout this whole thing. I saw multiple cases that went before judges and they dismissed them out of hand as being a waste of the court's time during the early pandemic. And I haven't seen anything in the way, because the test is the Oakes test, right? And so it has to be, whatever restrictions they're going to put on our fundamental freedoms, they need to be reasonable and justified, in a free and democratic society. And the efficacy, let's see, of lockdowns and masks, that was a guess, right?
Yeah.
That was a guess. And I think it became, conditioning for compliance. But hopefully people are waking up to that. And I'll go back to the Chinese component here, because we had this guy, Vincent Ke. He's an MPP in Ontario, and he's the guy who apparently could have been a back channel for the Liberal Party to the Chinese Communist Party. And CSIS had captured a phone call that he had with the consulate, I think, in Toronto, where he told him to hang on to the two Michaels for a little while longer, because if they let them out too soon, then that would provide favorable optics for the Conservative Party. And then recently we had the two Michaels show up in the parliament there. I showed this the other night. And for some reason, they have these two Chinese women with them who are not their wives, and nobody knows who they are. So, and they are out on bail, don't forget. So, are we able to protect our citizens here in Canada? Good question. It seems to be up in the air right now. But this is the tactic, okay? So this guy... they got him dead to rights. CSIS has him doing a backdoor deal with the Chinese Communist Party, and this is when he's confronted about it by Global News. Check this out.
Global News is not able to independently verify the allegations made by CSIS against Ke, Wei, or Dong.
This is a false accusation. This is racist. I told them in the email already.
You say it's racist? Why is it
racist?
It's
racist because I was born in China, because I come from China.
So you never received $50,000 from the Toronto consulate?
Nothing.
This is how they always play the race card.
Yeah.
They use the racism, label someone racism to distract the real issue here.
Jack Jay is the editor of this Toronto area Chinese newspaper.
This is a story we produced.
He's produced reports, which are banned on the popular Chinese messaging app WeChat, investigating Ke's political activities. He says Ke has appeared at events with Chinese consulate officials and pro-Beijing groups, like the Tibetan Association of Canada, which promotes Chinese rule in Tibet.
So this is very outrageous. There is so many conflict of interest.
In a state
standard. Conflicts of interest across the board. So yeah, that's since we were talking about the PSYOP again, this is the tactic. This is part of the gaslighting, the shaming. The West invented racism, and I found it so interesting that Vincent Ke, the way he responded, he said, "I told him in the email that this is racist. Like, I already let you guys know you're not supposed to ask me this question." Right? What do you think?
But you asked anyway. Of course. I mean, they've totally weaponized 3 words: racist, misogynist, and fascist. We have the most fascist government ever in the planet right now, sitting in our premier's office. Most people don't even know what these words mean, but they've been taught that racism is bad, fascism is bad, and misogynist is bad. So if they think something isn't in line with what they want, they're automatically fascist, racism, misogynist. And basically, it's a virtue signal to anybody that is empathetic with racists, or empathetic with a different culture, to jump on the virtue signaling wagon. Like, how many Chinese police stations are we up to now?
4, I think. 4 or 5.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's no question that media has been weaponized. I'm surprised that Global actually did a piece on it.
I'm encouraged by it. You know, some of these, well, that is the thing. I think this is another one of these watershed moments. Like we had a pretty good watershed moment with the convoy, woke up a lot of people. I think people are still a lot of folks out there are still looking for like the next big, hoopla, big, huge protest. And I'm not so sure that that's going to work again. You have it?
I have it. Hopefully.
Okay.
I'll give about tomorrow. So we'll see.
You got details? Can you share?
If I do, I'm probably going to get in trouble, but what do I care? Right?
I don't want to get you in trouble.
I'll share. So everybody's watching the NCI, or hopefully some people are watching the NCI. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are unsure what its purpose is. You know, they think it's a flat inquiry, like the one that went down for the convoy, where it kind of bared no fruit. It just provided information. Well, I think they found a vehicle for the NCI. I think the NCI is going to have, if the meetings go well, I think it's going to have a purpose that's going to very much inspire Canadians to jump on that wagon, because it's very much about action and a total module shift. So let's see if that happens. He.
That is kind of the next great hope is the NCI, which is the National Citizens Inquiry, folks, in case you're not tracking. But yeah, where are they? They're in Toronto on Friday, I think. And I'm going to be talking to Tom Razzo here on Thursday evening. So he's going in to give his testimony there on Friday. So check us out here on Thursday to hear what Tom has to say. Sorry, go ahead.
We're trying to think about this for a second, okay? And I'm going to say this all. I'm going to put it all out there anyway. So you've got a whole bunch of academics that's just now joined the freedom fight, right? We've got lawyers, we've got doctors, right, that are used to this. Now these are the normally traditionally in this time indoctrinated people, right?
Yes.
They were afraid to position the NCI in a certain direction because it might not encourage regular viewers to kind of jump on board and, learn and stand up and protect themselves. So basically, it's time for them now to kind of come out and give them their full agenda as to what really happens, because the freedom movement needs to get behind the NCI. And it needs, everybody in this whole entire country has been out on the sides of the street with signs that said, I've been vaccine injured, I've lost my job, I lost my son, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't want to take this, people have committed suicide over all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to just leave a teaser. If there was a vehicle that was going across the country to collect information for a very unique litigation, the NCI would be the perfect place to put it. So if all goes well, there'll be a massive, massive, massive drop of information. If not, that's okay. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that they'll allow the freedom movement to help navigate their way in the freedom movement, because, I've had conversations with them and I'm like, okay, who are we? Are we politicians? Are we lawyers? Right? What is our purpose? What do we want to do? Right? So we have to pick a side. I'm going to try to work with these guys to help them define their identity and inspire us.
I will. I support that 100%. I'll say. And here's the website, folks. It's the NCI, National Citizens Inquiry, and you can call for witness. It's open now, and apply to testify, all kinds of stuff. If you want to go tell your story, I should probably get on that myself. And,
you should.
Yeah. I was right there. I was one of the veterans on the line in Ottawa and whatnot. So, and it's still infuriating to me to this day what we experienced. And saddening, more than anything. I think I'm just sad. I said it was the fall of Canada, 18 February, 2022. But yeah, this looks legit, and not just looks legit, but it is legit. And the comment about we're getting more professionals, I think, that are coming to the freedom movement, as in, you know, the lawyers, the professors, the doctors. And I understand what you're saying there, Dana, because I was an NCO in the military, and so I was basically the interlocutor between the troops and the officer corps, as in the management class, the professionals, the managerial class, and they need an interlocutor. They being the highly educated types that have been institutionalized for their entire lives are they've been ensconced in our institutions essentially, and a lot of times even the high IQ folks, they have Asperger's and they don't really relate to people very well. They kind of need somebody who's in the middle there somewhere, and
they're new to our fight, right? They don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, they're, oh, all these hotels have bad Wi-Fi signals. I said, it's called government interference. Like, you need a resident freedom fighter to just going to help you navigate through this. And they're like, well, can we use a hotspot from somebody else's phone? No, you need your own independent internet, because the more popular you get, the more aggressive the government interference is going to be, right? So that's what I mean with the NCI. Like, they're just getting their feet on the playing field, and they're ready to go, and they're so excited. But we also got to help them, like, button up their little war helmets and, dust them off and kind of point them in the right direction. So how do they bring us to the table? I'd really like to see our freedom movement get behind it and support the convoy of truth and have it end up in some type of litigation. That's the goal.
Yes. And this is the one that has the potential, it has the teeth, I think, hopefully once it's all on the record. And here's the schedule for everybody's situational awareness. So you got it, Toronto on Thursday, the 30th here. And I think I said it was Friday, didn't I? But it is Thursday. But, and then they're going to Winnipeg, 13 April, 20 April, Saskatoon, 26 Red Deer, Alberta. So you guys can go check that out again on their webpage here. And they're going everywhere here. So, and they're rounding things out May 17th, Ottawa, Ontario. So yeah, if you get a chance, you can apply to give testimony there. And this is where the fight is now. I think you're right about that.
It's the only fight in the country. Really, the only big fight besides the litigation and things that are going through. And like I said, everybody was on the streets with their signs going rah, rah, rah. Here's a way that it can be documented. It's sworn under oath, and it's a legal submission. If there's any class action lawsuits, it could end up in a class action lawsuit, right? All of this information will be collected. It could end up in a malfeasance tort.
Yep.
Possibly, there's and they need support. And just because they're, white collared academics doesn't mean that us freedom fighters can't jump on and, give them a rah, rah, rah in the background. Right.
Oh, I'm not bagging on the white collar types. We all need each other, and we all have a role to play in the, in the fight. Absolutely. But like I said, I think that there's probably going to need to be, the sort of the balance. Yeah. You need somebody with street smarts to kind of hang around and keep them in line. And that's I think, they tend not to have that. The academic types.
They're afraid. We're scary.
Yeah. I had another one here that I just kind of wanted to throw this up because I love this guy. Do you know Alex Stein? Alex Stein, number 99.
Hey guys, it's me, Alex. I'm with my wife and her boyfriend, Dontarius. We just found out we're pregnant. Dontarius is the father, and we're here to do the gender reveal. So, twist it, honey. What is purple? That means the baby's non-binary!
All right. So there's Alex Stein.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But the best parody is the stuff that it's hard to tell. It could be true. It really could be true.
How many flavors do we have now in the LGBTQ? And what is non-binary exactly? I don't know what non-binary means.
Nothing. It's an incoherent statement, really. Because now we're either binary or we're non-binary, and I'm like, that is a binary system. There are two. possible options. You're binary or you're non-binary. That's a binary system.
Sounds like a corset that's uncomfortable.
But yeah, it's because, well, non-binary just means I think that's what they're using for like gender fluid right now. So you're not really a male and you're not really a female, but
isn't that what condoms are for? Gender fluids. I'm just kidding. I'm
nice.
on fire.
Leave it. Leave it to the ladies of Newfoundland. Sorry, that's a little East Coast humor there, folks.
That's okay. I'm down with it. It's fine.
Okay, right on. All right. So, Dana, anyway, listen, I appreciate you being so generous with your time and keeping up the fight out there. Like, holy smokes. You were one of the original organizers in Ottawa. I think you led the convoy east out there from Newfoundland too, didn't you?
Yeah, I launched 9 extortion openings in police stations in 9 provinces in our country.
Wow.
The big one. That was my first step out. And we still have a file opened in Edmonton. So we still have an extortion investigation going on in Edmonton that we're constantly funneling information to. So it's still open. It's not dead.
Nice.
So that's always a good sign. Yeah, I've done all kinds of crazy things. I get abducted by the Freedom Fairies often. And believe it or not, once you wake up, anybody out there that's kind of sleepyhead on the fence, it's as much fun as you could possibly have. Like to meet new people and to be free. You know, it's a good place to be. Our movement is the place to be. It's like the interesting thing is they say, like in any movement, the one person that goes out dancing on the dance floor by themselves, everybody's going like, whoa, that guy's a bit of a weirdo, right? And nobody wants to go dance with him. But then the second person comes and he's actually the true leader. So our movement is growing exponentially because the bigger core were like the people that were first out on the dance floor. And now they're starting to come along and the trend is coming and we're all about to have the big dance party in the freedom movement as we wake up this big nation.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we're like with the revelations about Chinese interference. Like I said, we had a watershed moment in Ottawa, and now with the revelations about China, and the mainstream media is starting to turn on the regime, and the kinds of headlines that we're seeing right now, global news picking up the whole thing with Vincent Ke, and they've been pretty aggressive on it. Like it's pretty honest journalism. So yeah, I'm optimistic when I see these kinds of developments, and we got the NCI, running concurrent to that, and everybody across Canada is screaming for election, I think. But then we're in this.
Talk about that for 1 second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please. Sure. Okay. Yeah. So if you notice with the COVID, I'm going to tell you 2 things about elections. Number 1, the little child case that happened in Alberta set case law that says the government, anybody that's running for a political campaign can legally lie to you because their commitment is to the crown. I suggest you look it up because that's fact. Number 2, when I ran for PPC, I did run for PPC in the last election for a member of parliament in my neighborhood. While we were going through our election and distracted through our election, they amended the emergency acts and the emergency orders in almost every single province. Wow. Okay. Right. And then the election itself. Okay. So I live in Newfoundland, right? We have very little seats and we have very little power because our population is small. So everybody down here is always being like whipped by Canada because they're like, Newfoundland is liberal. They're the reason we have Trudeau. No, we're not. We're not powerful enough to change the election. But what we are powerful enough to do is we look at Alberta. Alberta is looking at getting their own sovereignty, and Danielle stepped up for 5 minutes to do whatever she was doing there for a second, a little flash in the pan, like I'm gonna look like something not. But if we legitimately focus on our own province and starting from the municipalities up and electing people who we actually thought were going to defend our provinces, if we start at the bottom, that's where it's at. And voting for the lesser of the 2 evils is still fucking evil.
Yeah.
It's like, but I'm not going to try that over there because that might be good. So,
full disclosure, I am a card carrying member of the PPC as well. So I plan on getting active if it comes into election season here for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't talk my politics. I try not to. I give my opinion a lot, I guess, but I try not to get into the actual party politics in Canada, but I might as well give my opinion here. And all this stuff about splitting the vote, I think, is garbage. What's that?
That's a psyop.
It's a
Convincing
psyop,
people
yeah.
for the lesser of the two evils.
Yeah, and they talk about splitting the vote, and if you vote for PPC, then it's basically a vote to get Trudeau back in there. Now, number one, I don't really know about all this going to an election when all we know right now is that the Chinese are interfering in our elections and have been for a while, and we haven't done anything to put a stop to that yet. So there's that. But also the split the vote mentality, I just find like they're all progressives, like Pierre Poilievre, Justin Trudeau, two different sides of the same damn coin, and they're all being managed by the same corrupt political establishment. And that's where we are right now. That's what happens in a fourth turning, is the people that big institutional power are corrupt. That's the boomer generation. And and they're Pierre's handlers. Like, he's a made man who was brought in from Saskatchewan to a conservative stronghold riding just outside of Ottawa. And he's been getting groomed by the Ottawa insiders his entire adult life. So he's a kept man. He follows orders. He toes that party line. And it's a progressive party line at this point, because that's what's happening with that's what happened with the Conservative Party over the last several years. Maxime Bernier was a close second at 49% to Andrew Scheer, and they cut him out of the party. They had strong showing from Derek Sloan the last time, and what did they do? Excommunicated him just before they went into a struggle session, like a CCP style struggle session, where Michelle Rempel's tweeting about her colonialist past and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, when I see that, when I see the commie propaganda coming from the highest levels of the Conservative Party, and I see them going back to their old ways of progressive conservatism, when it's not big tent anymore. There are a lot of people over on the right end of the spectrum that are homeless. They're politically homeless right now. So I'm not splitting the vote. I'm voting. Well, first of all, I'm voting with my principles, and it's a vote for the right side of the spectrum. This is the only kind of right-leaning party. It's a classically liberal platform, and so there's no. It's either you're voting progressive or you're voting classically liberal. At this point, I'm not splitting the progressive vote in any sense of the word. Those commie bastards never show any progress to anything except communism. So, and I'm voting against that.
Can I plug one more thing before I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So sometimes I feel like I need to do motivational things in our country and just drop bombs. I come back from like a 25-year national humanitarian background. Before this, I was Canada's sweetheart, celebrated by the CFL and NFL as the one and only Canadian community nominated national hero before I became a supervillain. So I wanted to create something that I thought would be super neat for our country. On April 1st, we're launching Burn the Mask campaign, #BurnTheMask. And what we want you to do is we want you to burn a mask on a video and tag 3 of your friends. Some people have said, like, why would you do this now when the masks are gone? It's not about the mask. It's about being a victim and liberating yourself, saying, okay, we know that these masks don't work, so we kept them on anyway, but we kept them on because we were submissive, and it showed a compliance. So on April 1st, join us, or anytime you see fit, burn yourself a mask. Ask grandma to burn her mask too on a live stream, #BurnTheMask, and let's start the wave across Canada.
Matt's letting us know that there's a flyer out there for this event. Apparently it's all gone down 1 April. So that sounds like a pretty effective social media campaign, actually. I like it. So yeah, more power to everybody out there.
Get your face nappy, Jeff.
Get my face mask?
Get your face nappy ready to burn. Yep.
Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. Whatever it takes. It's just an awareness raising campaign, and there's no risk. I think in this one, this is a low risk activity that everybody can participate in, and if we get enough people out there doing it, make it trend. Yeah, then it's advantage freedom. So let's do it. All right, Dana, listen, you got anything else you want to plug before we take off here?
Yes.
Okay.
Ever going to get off this podcast. Number 1, waking up the normies. Be nice. Number 2, if you love God, it's okay to keep that a secret. Number 3, don't fall into the whole posting all this negative shit all the time. Give some people some positive things to do and to talk about. Create community events where you talk about sustainability. And the number 1 thing that you need to do right now is to secure your food supply. So as we're going into spring, look for co-op grow gardens, look for alternative heat sources. Make sure if you've got some time to reach out to some seniors to help encourage them to have what they need if they don't have anybody to support them. And live today like you stole it. Don't worry about your credit cards. Go on that holiday. Screw the system. Don't say F Trudeau because it's really not classy, because we know it's not Trudeau. It's the whole entire system. And love your families. Put your balls back on your men because they need them, because we need them. And get your kids out of the indoctrination camp. Write a letter to your school. Make sure they know about morals and values, and that if they have a penis, it's okay for them to have a penis and still love a man. That is okay. That is all. That is all I have.
All right. As I said before, I appreciate your candor and your passion as well. You're a busy lady, so lots to be admired there. We appreciate you, and stay frosty and stay safe out there, troops.
Take care, guys.